Wrestling, another podcast about it. These are the ramblings of a wrestling fan. My mission, to talk to wrestling personalities and other fans, to seek out new promotions and podcasts, to talk about wrestling like a lot of people before me. Today I am sitting down with Rick Del Santo of PWZ Podcast. And Rick, I want to thank you for sitting down with me to chat today. It's a pleasure and an honor. Appreciate your support of the Alliance blog and the other Alliance guys and what we try and do over there. And it's great to sit down and talk with you finally. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. I love you guys over there. You guys are like brothers in a way. Yeah. You know what I mean? We always talk about a lot of similar topics, and I'm very supportive of you guys, and you guys are doing a great job covering that stuff. So thank you very much for having me on here today.
Not a problem at all. It's like I said, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate you taking some time out. So what got you into wrestling?
1984. During the whole rock and wrestling era when it was kicking off. I didn't know a lot about it, honestly. It's just I walked into the room. My cousin was watching Roddy Piper beat up some preliminary wrestler, and I was just like, wow, this is awesome. Like, what the hell is this? And, I just kind of became hooked after that a little bit, but that was just the beginning of my fandom. It was once I attended my first live show that I became obsessed with professional wrestling. Which would not be another 4 years later. So,
well, let's go ahead and dive right into that then. So, what was that live event that got you obsessed with professional wrestling?
The WWF. I grew up right outside New Haven, Connecticut, so they would frequent the New Haven Coliseum. Now it's a demolished building. It's just a parking lot and I work in an office that's right across the street from where that Coliseum used to stand.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's kind of, we watched that actually get demolished. So I went to the 1988 April TV tapings. And once I went to that live event, it was the energy that truly made me obsessed. Like the history, I went back and read the history. I'd buy old magazines if I was able to come across them. I just became obsessed, like literally. And then almost what's it got to be 30 something years later. So, I'm still obsessed with that, with the great sport of professional wrestling.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you say that you got introduced to it with the Roddy Piper and the rock and wrestling and everything, and that made me remember of the old what was it, Body Slam, I believe was the movie with him
Dirk
and
Benedict.
Yes. Man, I love that movie. It had what was the Wild Samoans, I believe, were in it.
The Samoans, Piper. Let's see, Tonga Kid. Flair even makes an appearance in there. I actually was on a podcast not so long ago, well, probably last year, Shocking Things, and we did a retro review of Body Slam. So that's as a kid growing up, that was one of my favorite movies. So we always joke, there's a tag team out here called the House of Pain that are in Connecticut. We always joke that we're going to remake that movie starring the three of us.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, I grew the first movie that I remember seeing Roddy Piper in was They Live.
Oh, that's a great movie.
And I was already a Halloween fan at that point, so I watched that. And then the most memorable movie that I've seen him in was Hell Comes to Frogtown.
I own that on DVD. So
I absolutely, it is such schlocky goodness. It's so good.
If anybody that really knows the real Rick Del Santo outside of the podcast and stuff like that, they know that I'm a huge cult film fan, and that just fits right in with possibly the cheesiest, not that it's done by this guy, but the cheesiest of like Roger Corman films or something similar to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very absurd movie. It's very weird.
Kind of Corman Kaufman-esque, Lloyd Kaufman in there.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's another one of mine is cult films and stuff like that. I'm a big movie buff. So
yeah.
So growing up, who did you gravitate towards the most as a professional wrestler?
Well, growing up in the early 80s when I discovered it, obviously every kid was obsessed with Hulk Hogan. It wasn't probably for another couple years. There's another couple years before I started actually paying attention to the technical aspect of professional wrestling. You know what I mean?
Right.
At that time, you're watching probably the cartoonish aspect where everything was built up a certain way and all that stuff. Yep. But once you start watching the actual technical aspect, Rick Rude became one of my favorite wrestlers.
Oh, yeah.
So early days, Hogan was it because Hulkamania was running wild. And, you know, I think once I saw Rick Rude, I was like, damn, this guy's really good. And then, you know, Arn Anderson became one of my, and then once I discovered the NWA, probably a year after, probably like 85-ish, 86-ish, that's when like wrestling changed for me in a certain way, as far as WWF is too cartoonish, the NWA, yep. AWA, all that stuff presents it like it's a real sport. It's in a darkened arena. It's just people are using real sounding names. They're not gimmicks, people walking out with, you know, pets and stuff like that. So there's some sort of obsession there that this is real. I always thought that was a real, like, not to call wrestling fake, but those were companies were real, and WWF was just a cartoon. It was a TV show.
Yeah. That's a lot how I was. I grew up at I grew up in Evansville, Indiana. So we had the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, and Memphis was on. We were part of the Memphis Loop, so I grew up watching all that, and then I got introduced to the WWF. And as a kid, it was cool and everything, but kind of like you, around the end of the 80s, I was like, this is fun and all, but I really like the realism of the NWA and the AWA and such, because it was just a better product, I thought, in ring and out of the ring.
Yeah, it's wrestling was everywhere at that time period. I mean, much like it is today in a way, because, you know, throughout the 1990s, there's really the big three, and then you didn't get a lot of other companies. But in the 1980s, you used to, where I grew up, you can get the AWA World Class on ESPN, and then obviously later USWA. We used to get Memphis up here. You know, I would watch the CWA, and then you know, so I'd watch literally anything that was considered professional wrestling. You know what I mean? Any company I can get. There'd be like those small UHF channels that would have syndicated, you know, random territories and stuff like that. So I would always, if I saw something was on, I gravitated towards it. And then, of course, into the 1990s, when I was a teenager, I got into tape trading. And then that was just, to me, it was just an amazing thing. You know what I mean? I would get wrestling from all over the world. You know, I'd get, you know, I had friends in New York that I would trade with, friends out in, there's a guy in Connecticut I would trade with as well that I would get some good stuff from. But it's just, it was such a great time to me be a fan in the 1980s. The wrestling then was different. Obviously, I still love it. But watching things like the AWA and World Class, I don't think that, or the NWA of the Crockett era, there's not going to be anything like it. I still love the NWA today, but I'm sure you've heard me complain about it and talk about it on occasion, but how my feelings are in the modern era of the NWA.
Yeah. I think we've echoed those a couple of times here and there as well. And it's not, and we always try to preface it with, you know, this isn't bashing the NWA or anything. This is, I truly consider what I say constructive criticism.
Yeah.
You know? So I just want to see them do better. You know, that's it. But moving on, so I went back into the into the PWZ podcast archives. I didn't have enough time to go through how much content that you pump out, bro. I mean, you are like a machine.
Yeah, that's if I'm not working, I'm working on the podcast and videos and such like that. I'll sign on and do a 10-minute video just talking about whatever, you know what I mean? It's just it's something I love to do. So
I commend you and I applaud you for it, because like I said, I didn't have enough time to go through everything and pin down this and that. I was blown away. I did see where you had recently, it may have been a couple of months back, but sat down with Blake Bulletproof Troop.
Yeah, I got hooked up by him. Do you know Matt Classic, Matt Creed? He runs the AIWF, and we became pretty friendly over the last probably a year. And a lot of times he'll just say, "Hey, man, I'm working with this guy. He's coming in for a couple dates. Would you mind interviewing him?" No, Blake literally is the one that actually was coming in to do AIWF dates, and he contacted me. He sent me a friend request and said, "Hey, I talked to Matt Creed. He said you'd have me on your show." Okay, no problem. He was a cool dude. He was he was a pretty cool dude. Different, pretty unique, but he was cool dude. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. He was doing commentary for just a split second, I believe, wasn't he?
He was doing something for a couple
MLW, wasn't it?
Oh, did he do MLW? I didn't. I've been trying to keep up on MLW as of late because that's a company that I've been getting back into. There's they disappeared during like the pandemic for a while, and then now they've been running shows for like a few months on the Reels, and I think the Reels deal is about to end, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many more shows they have to air, but
which is quite sad because it literally just really began.
They seem to find a network and then they're not on that network anymore. That's been the history of them. They'll be on there for a year. Like they were on Bein Sports and they were on there for a while. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. The best option seems for them, and it's not to slight them at all, but be YouTube because it's the only consistent thing that they can get, really.
Yeah, and that's my I don't understand why more companies don't. Here you go. That's like with the NWA with 312, their pay-per-view this past weekend. There were a lot of complaints about the quality of it and everything, and Fight's just basically like, you need to get a hold of the NWA about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was sorely disappointed in that show, and the funny thing is, it's like, I'm a huge NWA supporter. No matter what I've been through the worst period, this is, God help me, Billy, but, this is probably the worst time for them, to be honest with you, that I've seen in many, many years. And I've seen them struggling since, WCW left, or they left WCW. No, WCW left the NWA, and I've seen some weird champion choices and some weird events over time. And this, it used to be when Power started. It was the show that, all right, Tuesdays I got to be there 6:05. Nobody bother me.
Yep.
Now it's just I'll watch it when I get home, or I'll watch it later, whatever. Now I wait 2 or 3 days to watch it. It's not must-see TV for me anymore. And then it's a lot of times it's just some of their choices, their decisions. It's just, man, I'm really upset that I sat there and wasted my hour. So with USA, I'll sit there and I'll put it on when it comes on Saturday. But 9 times out of 10, I'm sitting there in the chat on my phone, in the live chat, just BSing with the other guys that come through the chat that also bleed over into Memphis wrestling, which comes on right after. And then we sit there and we watch Memphis, but all through USA, we'll sit there. And even then, whenever I go back to watch it for my show notes, I end up sitting on my phone most of the time. And USA is the better program out of the two, in my personal opinion. It's more fast paced. It's shorter, but to me, it's more fast paced. It's well put together. I get to see my buddy Wrecking Ball Legursky on that program. You know what I mean? He's from around these parts, so I'm very proud of that guy being there. Last time I saw him, he's like, he didn't think anything was going to happen, but it finally happened. He's there with the NWA, so that's where I get to see him probably once a month or whatever, and he's a great guy. So I'm glad that he's doing something out there.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, he's an interesting fella.
He's a very nice guy outside of, he's a very, very nice guy.
Yeah. Let's see. What I had another question.
Hit me up with the questions. Now, you were talking Memphis. That's another show that it took me a while to get into.
Yeah.
But now it's one of those things that has become my weekly must-watch wrestling show, like that one. And, aside from Championship Wrestling, which I've always been a fan of,
Yeah.
And now Derby City Wrestling. I saw the debut episode. I was blown away. I was like, damn, this was really good. You know what I mean? So
that crowd was white hot. It had that big vibe feel to it, and look. I really liked what they did with what they had.
Yeah.
Because the space that they're in isn't really all that big, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, it didn't look like it was crazy big or anything.
Yeah, but they still made it feel and sound like it had a big feel to it, and that was my match of the week for Derby City, was the show, because it was very well put together. And I said it Wednesday night. Nobody's doing wrestling production like Dave Marquez right now.
The guy knows what he's doing, to be honest with you. And I'm going to tell you that the NWA suffers from not having him as a part, because not only was he great at producing, he has a certain charm about him when he was up there doing interviews and his speaking parts, his announcing parts. He had a certain charm about him that drew you to his sections. Like, you paid attention. It wasn't nothing against Kyle Davis. You know what I mean?
No.
He's good at what he does. But there was something. David Marquez has been in the business a very long time. He puts on really great. He knows how to do a really great wrestling show.
And he, like you said, nobody has a presence like the way he stands and he present. You go for that microphone, he's pulling it back. It don't touch my mic. He and the way he delivers his questions, and it's just chef's kiss.
You put him in the category with guys like Gordon Soley and Jim Ross back in the day. But there's just something really great about him. And like I said, I love anything he touches wrestling wise. I'm all about. If he's involved, I'll watch it. I know that he puts on a wrestling show, and that's the whole thing with United Wrestling Network. That has been really my go-to wrestling as of right now. I mean, I still kind of I still keep in touch with, or keep on top of AEW and WWE, but it's not my preferred. I don't watch their shows in their entirety. I fast forward through the majority of both of those, shows. Because they're not interesting to me. There's, I want to see wrestling. I don't want to see, a bunch of stuff.
Yep. Same here. I try to watch as much as I can, and but there's a lot that I end up fast forwarding through just to get to the next thing, and 5-10 seconds into it either hooks me or I'm hitting that fast forward button again.
As soon as certain people come out on that TV, it's like, the fast forward button. It's that sometimes I can't grab that remote quick enough.
Yep. Yep. So, Rick, I want to thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me all over the place. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find the PWZ page on Facebook. Please go like it, share it, get your friends to like us. We got a really big announcement coming on this Sunday's episode. Ooh. So I haven't let that out, but let me just give you a hint. He's a former WWF Intercontinental Champion and Tag Team Champion, and from one of the most famous Canadian wrestling families. I'll tell you, Jeremy, off the air. So I'm very excited about that. But if you don't mind, I'd like to plug a little something before we get out of here.
You have the floor, sir. Go for it.
I am working on a film with a wrestler out of my area called Bull Dread. He's become a very good friend in the last few years. We're making a documentary. He's been wrestling for about 22 years now. And we are documenting the last 3 years of his career. And we're going to be releasing this as a film. So we've got a lot of guys like legends from our area, such as Mario Mancini, Jason Knight, who was Bull Dread's trainer, formerly of ECW, will be part of the film as well. I just confirmed this today. So I'm really looking forward to that. And obviously it's a couple years away, but just wanted to announce that we are working on this film, and the wheels started to roll.
Oh, excellent. I look forward to further updates into when that drops. Well, Rick, I thank you very much, like I said, for taking some time out of your day to talk with me.
Thank you.
Pleasure. And as always, I thank you for supporting the Alliance and the other Alliance guys. And thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.